Well, greetings. I want to talk with you a little bit about understanding work teams and some second level issues with using teams at work. And in this particular book, Robbins and Judge, it's chapter 10. So I'm using those PowerPoints. There's no I in team, but there's also an M and E, and that spells me. I thought that was interesting. Teams are popular, and there's an inclination among, quote, enlightened managers to use teams. Now, by the way, I think teams do wonderful things, but not all situations call for teams. We'll have a slide about that a little later. So as companies have restructured, a lot of times they try to work teams in, having read some of the literature and knowing some of the good things that can come from teams versus just groups of people. And if you're really wanting to be flexible, I think teams that are nimble are things that can really be helpful. And we know some other org behavior things about having part of a decision making you more committed to the decision. I'll say that again, that having been heard on problem solving or decision making, having been heard, like in a team, the person that's heard feels more committed, whether or not they do the idea that that person brought forward. Differences between work groups and work teams. I've gone through here and put gold on the typeface, the font, things that I think are really important. And I think adding the word synergy helps you understand the difference between work teams and work groups. And I talked about that on the other video on teams. There are at least 4 types of teams. It's not the 4 types, but these are types. And we have problem solving or task teams often. We have self-managed teams, and I want to talk about that. We have cross-functional teams where you don't have a team full of engineers, but you have one engineer, one plumber, one planner, one HR person, one marketing person. So any problem that hits, you have teams, talent there. And then we have virtual teams. In self-managing work teams, often these are formerly departments with a supervisor. So the typical idea here is that you have a normal department and you've taken away the supervisor and then you've translated the group of workers into self-managing work teams, autonomous work groups. There's a number of names for this. We'll stick with self-managed work teams. So 10 to 15, typical span of control. The supervisory responsibilities are distributed among the members of the team. Sometimes I describe this as these things like planning, scheduling, hiring, quality control that maybe rotate between members on the team. They could also just become specialized members. Could be just a member of the self-managed work team who does the weekly scheduling of the tasks for the team, or it could be that once a month they change those duties. I think it's important that typically these self-managing work teams both have a role in hiring that the supervisor maybe used to have, and also a role in discipline. Virtual teams have challenges, and I'd like to add this information in a survey of 30,000 employees from multinational companies. The problems that they've seen in electronic email, listserv, or other platform teams is that they complain about the inability to read nonverbal cues. Obviously, they're not going to see those nonverbal cues like expressions, gestures. Not enough time during meetings to build solid relationships. The person at the other end of even a video conference is just somebody. It's not an individual, perhaps in their mind. The absence of collegiality among the team members is often a problem. Hard to establish rapport and trust. 81% of the people are saying that are doing this, so it's not just some small complaint. Managing conflict is tough. Decision making is difficult, and it's harder to express opinions. And these are all 2/3 of the people or more saying this. So There's some problems with virtual teams, and yet in international locations we're stuck with it. So how do we solve it? That's always our question in management. So if you look at team composition and its success, some of it depends upon the ability of the members, how good are they at technical expertise, often pretty good, problem solving, often not so good, interpersonal, often terrible. And so you'll have a mix of this, and then of course the personality of the members. And in the one study, we found that surprise, conscientiousness, helps determine performance within a team. It does it every other way. And open-mindedness also becomes, or open in the big five, open becomes useful in team work as well. I mean, if somebody's closed to new experiences, they're not going to be very helpful on a team, not going to be very nimble or flexible. And then there are other things. What are the roles of people? What's the diversity of members? What's the size of the team? And so these things have sort of expectations that help them work better, and then they have size issues, for instance, that hurt team outcomes. So if you have 20 people in a team, that's not going to help very much. So I like this. So here's how effective we can be, and then in the process we use, we either gain or lose or both because of it. For instance, if it's virtual, we're talking about that. We know we have some process losses. So the actual group effectiveness is the potential minus the process losses plus any gain, and that's the actual group effectiveness. So the process matters in terms of the team. That's all it really says. So how do we turn individuals into team players? And I think this also helps in these virtual teams, but also in the face-to-face teams. First, we need employees who have interpersonal as well as technical skills. Do we have that? We can do workshops on problem solving. And then we can encourage cooperative efforts. So just simply having a team and not doing any of these things, especially I think the training one, doing some heads up at the beginning on how do we get into being better problem solvers. I think that's important, and we can do that. And as a matter of fact, I think I've seen that most every time I've been in as a consultant to work with the team. They've always had some upfront training that I'm either a part of, or run, or have observed to help that team work together. I want to move along. Here's a 3-pronged test about why teams aren't always the answer. Can the work be better done by one person? Don't take individual tasks and turn them into team projects. Is there a common purpose or set of goals for the people that creates more than the aggregation of just individual goals? Is there a purpose here where 1 + 1 + 1 can equal 5? Or is it really just breaking down a task so 1 + 1 + 1 equals 3? That happens in a lot of probably student projects, right? You just divide the labor, and then the result doesn't have synergy, doesn't have a common purpose beyond just each person doing their own little thing, and then they operate independently. And so if you can divide the work and finish the project, it's not just a team project. It's not a team project, it's a group project because it lacks synergy. And are the members of the group interdependent? If they depend upon each other, then perhaps they are a team. All right, I hope this was helpful.